What's going on, everybody? Good evening. Good evening. And I got myself and Tom Root with me tonight as we discuss BOP issues, compassionate release, and who better to discuss it than Tom Root, our analyst and expert for the last couple of years. So, welcome, Tom. How are you doing this evening?
Well, I never got compassionate release for myself, but pretty good. How you doing, Dan?
I'm doing fantastic. It's always haven't had you on in a while, so it's nice to have some topics here that we can talk about, and actually maybe some relief that others can take advantage of. Because I know you've been in my ear pretty recently about compassionate release and how there's some new things coming out that are being affected that can help individuals that has changed very drastically. So I kind of just want you to kind of take it away and let me know if you need me to pull up any slides here.
Yeah, well, let's put that slide up showing people what things are like in the BOP these days.
Are you referring to the chart?
COVID, that cool chart I sent you.
Okay, let's open up that cool chart that you sent me. Here it is.
Yeah, I started keeping the BOP COVID numbers that are reported every day. Started keeping them back in April of 2020. And I've kept them every day ever since. Our big peak was in January of 2021. You can see we peaked at about 7,500 people. Well, at least that record held until today. Last Thursday, the BOP said it had 6,100 people sick with COVID. Today, the number shot up past 9,000.
Wow.
So, I got to tell you that after we fell off that peak back in January of this year, and by the way, I apologize. I see that my scale underneath seems to say everything is 22, and it's not. This thing starts in April of 2020, and when we hit that first peak in May of 2020, 3,500 people, we thought that was about as bad as it could get. Then we hit another one in July. Then it fell down, and if you remember, the end of last year was a disaster, and that was 7,400. After that, it fell, and of course, all along the BOP has said that everything's under control, nothing to look at here. I always think I think of BOP Director Carvajal as the wizard in the Wizard of Oz. Pay no attention to that man behind the curtain.
So seeing a 3,000 spike there on the number, or 3,000 inmates spike on the numbers on people active with COVID, we were seeing a lot of people getting denied for compassionate release based on the facts that they either were vaccinated or they've already had some of their boosters, and that was a reason why a lot of the courts were telling people no. What are we seeing changing now? How does all of these new variants of COVID coming out, how does this affect somebody's possibility that might already be vaccinated being accepted into something like a compassionate release program?
Well, right now, the variant we have is Omicron. And the science is telling us that vaccines are not particularly effective. In fact, there were 2 studies last week saying that after 30 days, the vaccines had no effect on Omicron. One of the 2 studies said that after 5 months, it actually made you more likely to catch it. But last spring, we ended up getting into the what I call the vaccine whipsaw. If you didn't have the vaccine and you were an inmate, the courts were saying, well, you don't really care about COVID. You're not worried about COVID. You just want out, and they deny you for it. If you did have the vaccine, the courts would say, well, you're protected. So you were caught either way. That is changing with the courts. I was working on one just a few months ago. We filed in November, and it just got granted at the end of December. A nice guy who was doing life without, an LWOP, and he got let out after 19 years. So that I felt good about that. But the BOP predictably argued, you don't have to worry about COVID. This man's been vaccinated. And to his credit, the judge said, hey, haven't you been reading? The vaccines don't work. I consider it still a dangerous thing because the vaccines don't work against this strain. I've been telling people that regardless of your vax status, I think you can get by that predictable government argument now simply by pointing out that breakthrough vaccines or the breakthrough infections don't seem to respect vaccines. I don't know if we ever talked about what happened at Texarkana last August, FCI Texarkana, one of the early Delta sites where COVID Delta caught on. I'd had a guy down there who told me that the CDC was running around doing a study. And I thought, inmate.com, probably so, probably not. Sure enough, the CDC did, and they published it in October and found that, something like of their test group, 90% of the people who weren't vaccinated caught Delta, but 70% of the people who were vaccinated caught Delta. And even then we were seeing proof, and I was trying to pound it home to judges, but it really has taken effect now because Omicron's just getting everybody.
We don't know the stats, do we? I'm sure we don't. I should have asked this earlier. Out of the 9,000 people that are showing signs right now, do we know out of how many of those have actually been vaccinated or have had boosters at this point?
No, haven't gotten any data on that. Although I do know that at some institutions, you can do the math because you can see how many inmates are vaccinated and how many inmates are sick. And the number of sick inmates well exceed the number of unvaccinated inmates. I saw that looking at the FPC Alderson numbers. And if you're interested in seeing those, and if you don't know where to look, I gave Dan a link, the resources to BOP, and even better, the Department of Justice Inspector General's site.
Which one was that, Tom?
It's under resources toward the end of that group.
I think this is one of them right here.
Yeah, that's the Department of Justice Inspector General's website. They've got a really great page. If you, Dan, go to facility case trends. That's testing. Go next to it to case.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. Now you can just pick when it comes up. Okay, go down to selected facility down on the left. You can pick your facility. Pick Allenwood. They've got something going on right now. And click on it, and it will bring up.
What am I clicking on here?
You got it. You got Allenwood.
Oh, right.
Then actually you can drill down for FCC Allenwood if you go to the number 2, and you can pick one of the facilities at Allenwood, like the low.
Oh, very cool.
And it'll show you for the whole BOP. It'll show you for the facility itself.
Wow, these are the charts from that, huh?
Yeah, and that is it's fairly useful. Of course, the Inspector General warns you that it's no better than the data they're getting from the BOP, but that's a topic for another time. But you can see, for example, Allenwood Low, how many inmates were sick, and I think that was as of January 16. There's the update down to the lower right, the date.
Down here, yeah.
And but it shows inmates, shows staff, and even shows what things are like in the county in which the facility is located. And then the BOP puts numbers out every day. But the BOP, this is my site. This is because the BOP puts numbers up, but it's kind of like the Instagram of data. It disappears. Yesterday's numbers will be up until 3:00 today, then today's numbers 3:00 tomorrow, and you don't know what's going on. So, Dan, if you click on the word here, yeah, I've kept the chart ever since, I'd said April. It's March 22.
So you've been running it since March of 2020.
Yep. And every day I need to update it. I last updated in January 7th, but yeah, I've got the data for every day, number of inmates sick, number of staff sick, the number of facilities reporting active COVID, and the number of inmate deaths.
Wow. And then we saw it drop down around, 2000, where are we at here? Where we saw
if you go to January 21, it's peaking, and then it's fallen since then. And they figured they were in pretty good shape come early last summer.
Wow.
But
And then
early last
just,
summer, even the president wanted to declare COVID beaten.
well, yeah. So January, the beginning of January, we're at like almost 5,000. Then by the end of
No,
January,
actually go up one. I think you'll find right around there
there
was
it
our
is.
peak on December 27, 28, 76.90. That
Yep.
was the previous peak, which got blown away today.
And now, do you have today's numbers on there? I'm assuming, right?
Yeah. And as I say, I need to update this, and I will tonight. I just ran out of time before we got on here. But
Wow. Yeah. So it's now, are people taking it as serious as they were before, you think?
depends who you mean, people. It's a little
Are the
early to
BOP,
tell.
is the BOP or the courts, are they looking at it as just as serious as they were before, or is the government still throwing out objections when somebody is trying to go in for a compassionate release? Is the government saying, well, they've already been vaccinated, they're not at risk? Or is the government admitting now that being vaccinated really doesn't stop anybody from getting affected?
The government is not in the admissions business. No, the government is still arguing that if you've been vaccinated, your risk isn't that high, and the BOP has a robust response. I've read that so many times it makes me sick.
Right.
A robust response to the pandemic, and and is taking all these extraordinary precautions, and that's what the government says. That's why I was so gratified in that case I mentioned a week ago to see the judge say, you know what, BOP, I don't accept that anymore. I don't accept that vaccinations protect you. Just read the news.
I think a lot of people were aware that that just because somebody was vaccinated, it wasn't going to stop somebody necessarily from receiving the virus nor spreading it. And I think a lot of people thought maybe that by being vaccinated, they were now immune to the problem. And we're seeing, everybody I know that's got COVID right now, almost every single one of them has been vaccinated. So this thing is still completely blown out of control. And do you think that this aligns with the First Step Act at all? Because I know there's a bunch of new, and we're going to be talking about a completely different video at 8 o'clock for those of you. Oh, let's give everybody a heads up on that, Tom, real quick before we jump too far. 8 o'clock, guys, set your calendar there, or set your alerts, or copy this link. I'll drop it in the live chat. Tom's going to be back live with us at 8 o'clock because finally the rules have been laid out for First Step Act and how it affects you, and how many programming credits you can get, what's included, what's not included, how this is really going to help loved ones go home. So there's a link that I just dropped in the live chat, and there's also a link in the description of this video. So make sure you join us at 8 p.m., which is a little less than an hour from now. But go ahead, Tom, continue what you were talking about here on the other issues at hand.
Okay. Well, you asked whether people were taking it seriously. Well, the BOP's locked down again. They appear to be taking it seriously, or they appear to be doing the only thing they know how to do, as effective as that might be. As I've told guys, I hear from inmates all the time complaining about how what the BOP is and is not doing. And I just point out to them that a effective program of prevention is only as good as the dumbest person carrying it out. And they all then tend to point out that there are some pretty dumb people inside the walls, and a lot of them wear uniforms.
This has got to be a really hard, even if you have the most intelligent individuals in the world sitting there, just with everything. So, with the variants popping out, it's almost just kind of watching something evolve and how it's going to affect, and how do you self-contain something like this? It just seems like a massive danger to have so many inmates in an enclosed area. Right?
Well, that's the problem. You're right. No matter how smart they get about it, you get all the lows and all the minimums are these open dormitories. What do you do?
So what's an approach that, not everybody's going to be able to hire us to do, to help them with compassionate release or going through the motions? What is something somebody could take away from this video? If somebody was going to attempt to, try to help a loved one, or they've got a loved one inside right now, what is something that they should be thinking about if they're going to try to do a compassionate release and they're going to be using this as reasons? Should they be documenting medical records? Is there any streamlined process that you're aware of?
No streamlined process. Generally, the more documentation you can provide with the motion, the better off you do. Um, some people are in the wrong circuit and there's not much they can do about it.
What do you mean when you say in the wrong circuit? Because I think that's kind of referencing a call we had earlier today where not that they're in the wrong circuit, but there are some circuits display more of a challenge than other circuits on their understanding of how this works.
The 11th Circuit has been much more challenging than some other circuits. I would say, all things being equal, if I had to file one of these things, I would want to be from the 7th. But there's some other pretty good circuits and pretty good judges in some circuits.
For people that don't know 7th and the 11th, where are you referencing? What areas?
Oh, 7th is, let's see, Indiana, Illinois, Wisconsin. That's the 7th Circuit. The 11th, of course, is Georgia, Florida, Alabama.
It's a part of the good old Palm Beach County.
Yeah.
But still, if the argument is made, and again, we have a lot of attorneys that are doing their best to file these motions to help their clients. A lot of them are just they're inexperienced in the process. Do you think just because they're in a circuit that is going to struggle, do you think the more knowledge they have and what they're actually asking versus, just trying to file a compassionate release to go home versus filing a compassionate release to, vacate a sentence and then resentence somebody to the remaining time? You think it has a lot to do with what they're going to ask for in this motion as well?
Yeah, I think it does. And I think they've got to be very realistic about their weaknesses and how to get around them. Everyone talks about their medical conditions and COVID when they're talking about compassionate release for COVID. And that's, and I understand that, but you got to remember that compassionate release has two separate showings. You first have to show that you have conditions that are extraordinary and compelling. Then you have to show that the sentencing factors of the sentencing statute, which is 18 USC 3553, we'll call them 3553A sentencing factors, that those, you have to consider them. That's what the statute says. No one knows what that means. Generally, the judges look and say, is it just punishment? Have you done enough time? Are you a danger to the community? Is this going to send the wrong message to the community if you go home? More people get tripped up on 3553 than ever get tripped up on extraordinary and compelling reasons. It's just everyone likes to think about their medical conditions and write about them. No one wants to write about 3553, and you really have to focus on it. Which is what? Those are the sentencing factors. Right. So give somebody an example of because we've dealt with this so often. You've done 20% of your sentence. Well, I can tell you right now, you have a hill to climb because you're going to be talking to a judge who thought you deserved 120 months. And so far you've done 24 of them. The judge is going to have to somehow conclude that the 24 months you've done and you're going home, given your medical situation, everything else, isn't so offensive to the sentencing factors that he or she can't do it. And that's usually what you'll get. The judges say, we haven't done enough time. And what about situations where, at sentencing, maybe the medical wasn't really brought to the attention of the sentencing court, where now that helps. A lot of times the judges are saying, yeah, I knew you had shingles, or, I knew you had bad breath. I could smell it from here when I sentenced you. So that's not going to get you out. I talked to a fellow who has, he's actually got a different approach. He has a child who has a severe brain condition, and the poor little guy's in a walker now. And when they put a mask on him, they have to actually pin his arms down so he doesn't take it off. And I said, well, yeah, but the tough thing is, the judge is going to say, well, we knew about it. And he said, well, no, actually we didn't. He got diagnosed a week after sentencing. And I said, aha, now you got something. I mean, Judge, would you have given me whatever time he's got, 72 months, if you'd known I have this little guy at home and my wife's, got other kids to watch, and it's a mess and they need me? That makes a more compelling argument.
So when you're talking about the sentencing factors, I think it's Tom's making it very clear that it's important that if you're going to go back in front of your sentencing judge, that you need to do your best to display some new reasons that maybe were not brought up at sentencing, that the judge can consider that maybe was not considered prior.
Yeah. If you have to change the fabric of the sentencing, as if to say, Judge, you're a smart guy. If you had known then what you know now, because I'm telling you, it would have been different. Now, there's some other things you can argue, which is, some of these guys, when you sentenced me, we had no idea there was going to be this pandemic. I mean, there's a great Fourth Circuit case, US v. Kimball, and it was great not because of the decision as much as the chief judge's concurrence. And he said, we've got to look real hard at this. If we're just saying, well, you got a just sentence when you got sentenced, no one's going to get compassionate release.
Right.
He said, obviously, what is just doesn't necessarily mean the sentence. We didn't know about the pandemic then. We didn't know how tough it was going to be for inmates. We didn't know how tough it was going to be for people at home. None of that, and what would we have done differently? And then you got to look at the guy's condition, because, face it, if you got a 68-year-old guy, with cancer, with a serious heart problem, well, the judge is going to look at the sentencing factors a little differently than if you got a 25-year-old who happens to have a BMI of 31. So he is literally obese, but actually just a little stocky. Judge is going to look at it differently.
Right. And that's something that I know you've taken a lot of time when you've created, is really kind of drilling down any medical issues, comorbidities, getting clients to, because a lot of the times it's hard. The individual we're dealing with is obviously incarcerated. So going back and forth with getting medical records sent over, the more information, and it seems like a lot of these people that have requested to do it on their own, that have either maybe hired an attorney or did it pro se, they listed a lot of the issues, but they didn't really back it up with any proof. It's kind of like you're just expecting the judge to take your word for it. How important is it to be able to back up the data that you're going to present to a judge, explaining why they are at risk for COVID? You can't just go in there with this is why. You kind of need this in writing and the medical records to substantiate the reasons you're asking.
Yeah. The judges will remind the defendants, that is, people applying for compassionate release, that the burden of proof is on them. And I can tell you that if you don't come in with documentation, the government is going to cheerfully point out to the judge that you got no documentation. It's just your say so. And
then the defendant's going to say, well, you can look at my medical records, and that's when they're going to respond that this is on you to provide this to us. It's not our job to go do the homework.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I actually saw a judge go way too far on that. The defendant, because, you have to file the request with the warden and, exhaust your remedies with the BOP first. This guy put in a cop-out to the warden asking for compassionate release. He filed for compassionate release and put a copy of it in there and said, sent this to the warden on such and such a date, never heard back. The judge held he hadn't exhausted remedies because he could not prove to her that the warden actually received it. And I read that and I said, oh, come on, man. How does an inmate prove the warden received?
Yeah, that's a tough one.
Yeah. I mean, that was Judge Lynn in Northern District of Texas. And I swear, I don't think Barbara Lynn ever saw a compassionate release she liked. But when I saw that, I just said, oh my God.
And recently we've also had some situations where you've been able to assume that this could also be reasoning. We've had individuals that are on very specific medications that are very required for them to take, where the BOP is failing to administer the doses or giving to them at all. And where they would be getting this if they were on the street and they need it to survive. They need it for their health. Some of people are on like different levels of testosterone, where you use compassionate release as a reason to kind of force the BOP to either present the person with the medical needs that they're supposed to be receiving, that was in some cases ordered by a judge, or for the court to consider sending this person home if the BOP is not going to do what they're obligated to do. Do you see this as good reasons for potential compassionate release as well?
Well, yeah, or I say yes and no. You don't want to go into that deal thinking, my loved one just got there 10 weeks ago for a 5-year sentence, and I'm going to get him sprung and sent home on compassionate release. But if you want to use compassionate release as a bludgeon and have the government the government fold and say, well, we got the BOP doing what it ought to be doing here, and have the judge issue some order. And I have seen judges in compassionate release denials nonetheless direct the BOP to do something medically it's not doing. When I started working on compassionate releases, I tended to go easy on the BOP because, after all, the BOP's lousy medical care was not what it was about. But the government always comes back and talks about how extraordinary efforts, robust, health services taking care of all these inmates. And I finally threw my arms up and said, enough. And now in compassionate releases, we come right out of the blocks and say, Judge, the government's going to come in and whisper in your ear that everything's fine. Don't believe it. Fortunately, there is enough out there. We got people like the members of the Senate Judiciary Committee and the House Committee and the Judiciary talking about the BOP's failed pandemic response. So, I don't tell the judge that it failed. I let Senator Durbin tell the judge it failed.
Probably want to stay away from that. So on a final note here, before we wrap up, take a quick break before our 8 p.m. show. Do you think this is also, guys, I'm posting in the stream right now. If you want to book a consultation with myself and Tom, there's a link that I just posted in the live chat. There's that same link is also in the description. Tom, do you think right now is a time for people to strike if they're interested in compassionate release? And do you think this window is going to maintain? Because it seems like the window kind of just jumped back open for a period of time. We don't know how long this is going to last, but do you think this is something that people should strike while the iron's hot?
Yeah, I think so. I said on my blog a few weeks ago that this may be your last best chance for it. Reason I say that is because, Fauci and the others admit that there are going to be other variants coming along. But we've also got the COVID pills coming out. They're about 6 months away because it takes a lot to manufacture them, apparently, and they're expensive. But the government's going to have them, and 6 months from now, when we have the next outbreak, they're going to be giving everybody a pill and taking care of it, and the courts are going to say, yeah, you got no problems. I thought this was the last good chance, and now that I'm watching the numbers skyrocket, I'm thinking this is a great chance. The judges watch CBS News at night just like everybody else does, and they have Norah O'Donnell telling them how bad things are. They don't check their street knowledge at the door. Everyone knows it's bad, and you cite the BOP numbers.
There was a time when people were saying, I don't even know anybody that's ever had COVID. I think right now the opposite is being said, where everybody I know that's had the vaccine has COVID. So I think it's very, very aware to everybody involved that this is not just, some sort of a myth issue, that it really is spreading very, very fast. And there is no defense against it other than coming up with whatever's going to happen in time. So it seems like if you're going to take advantage of something, now is the time for people that have loved ones. If there's a shot to do something, now is the time that you really want to take advantage of it.
Well, the one defense I have heard the government advance is that, yeah, but Omicron's not as bad as Delta. It spreads fast, but no one's in bad shape. Today, the CDC just said that we're looking at something like 30 to 80,000 deaths in the next few months, and the death rate is going to skyrocket. So I think the death curve is going to follow the peak. And we're not at
And
peak yet.
maybe it's not as severe for somebody that's got proper care, somebody in their own house being able to sanitize, but we're talking about individuals locked in a massive, sardine box with tons of other individuals with no proper sanitization. It doesn't seem like it's any kind of a recipe for anything good.
Yeah, with healthcare that would do a third world country proud.
Well, there we go, guys. So, please, there's a link in the description of the video. Get your consultation with Tom Root. Find out if there's any, possibilities for you to help a loved one. Consultation is completely free. Usually runs anywhere from 20 minutes to an hour. We spend time. We go through Pacer. We can look up motions that were already filed. If you're trying to find out if something, maybe you've already think you hit a brick wall and you want to find out if there's any additional options for your loved one, it can't hurt to take advantage of the free consultation. Also, again, I just dropped a link we're going to be live here in about, what time is it? It is 7:30. In about 30 minutes, we're going to be live with Tom again. We're going to be discussing the First Step Act this time, which is a bunch of brand new news just came out on this. And my core links has been completely blowing up from inmates that they're starting to see their credits hitting. People are getting sent home. Tons of questions when it comes to RDAP, how these credits are applied, who gets it, who doesn't. So Tom's going to do a deep dive on that, and he's definitely got some great info. He blew my mind with it earlier, which made me want to do a 2-part video today on this. So Tom, I thank you for joining us here again, of course, always. Guys, I'm RDAP Dan, Federal Prison Time Consulting. Don't forget to subscribe, like, share these videos, and get your consultation. We'll see you in about 30 minutes, guys. Tom, thank you very much.